All right, so last time we started talking about the power of the criminal justice system. And, based off of that, because there's tremendous power, there are different views and perspectives on how to use that power. And so when we think about like different ways, right? If you've never thought, I would ask you to take a moment and ask yourself, and maybe someone around you, or maybe your own family, what should the purpose of the criminal justice system be? So, what should the purpose of the criminal justice system mean? So obviously we know that it is a form of social control that regulates and restricts the lives of all who are coming to encounter with it, right? But like with that power and knowing that to be like, what should we do with that information? Does this mean that we need to become more active in other ways? Should certain aspects be emphasized over others? Or is there something else that it should be doing? So because depending on your perspective, right? And again, I wouldn't say there's like any right or wrong answer to your views on this topic, but there are certainly consequences to one's views, right? So like anything, right? So if you adopt like a mindset and view how people are, there are consequences to how that plays out. So if you have a certain mindset, you believe things work a certain way, that shapes and views how you affect things, right? So let's talk about this from like one perspective. It's gonna be a good call. We'll just pick this one. So the first thing is that some people view the criminal justice system as something where crime needs to be controlled. And so adopting this perspective, right, people who offend, seem to have this link to being evil, dangerous, perhaps immoral, right? So that's one way to think about it, right? And there's tends to be an emphasis on personal responsibility. So these people who become involved are responsible for their own actions, and because these are ones that like willfully commit crime and are captured, they in some way must be dangerous or more controlled. So with that like coming into place, then the goal then is that the way that we prevent more crime is through speed, efficiency, a streamlined criminal justice system, and where there is a lot of equipment for law enforcement. So in ways that they can control crime in some way. Does this mean more weapons? Does this mean more rights to search people or to arrest people under certain different situations or something like that? So the goal is not necessarily, so there is less emphasis, there's also less emphasis on the civil rights of people, because the goal is just to be efficient. We accept mistakes are made in terms of violating rights and perhaps arresting people, but this is a net positive, and this is ultimately going to lead to less crime. So the goal then is to control criminal activity through fear and empower the government to control the population. The other part, so with that in mind, right, so this tends to be, you know, so we want to be like tough, right, for this particular system, and that's all well and good. But there are definitely other ways to think about it, right? Others, you know, are going to shape and change it a little bit, right? So if we think about the due process perspective, so there's still a value on preventing crime, and I don't think anyone would think that due process people aren't interested in preventing crime, but there is perhaps a greater belief that the government has tremendous power, as we've already discussed, in ways that they can control you through the criminal justice system. So the goal then is to restrict or curtail law enforcement powers and to protect the rights of people, or the civil rights of people. So these are people who often advocate for putting in roadblocks to prevent oppression. So that's the goal, right? Is that we put in these blocks, we're protecting the rights of other people. This may mean guilty people go free, but it protects the rights of the innocent. So you're more likely, instead of like falsely imprisoning or wrongfully doing someone, you're more likely to protect that in general. So that's where we're at with due process. We think about a different perspective, right? Rehabilitation, we'll call it rehab. This is like Amy Winehouse music note. That's not a music note. How do you do those? Yeah. Tried to make me go to rehab. I said no. No. You guys, if you guys don't know that song, look it up. It's Rehab by Amy Winehouse. She's dead now because of, like, I think alcohol or drug usage or something. So she actually needed rehab. Go figure. So when we think about like rehab, right? You know, there's some people who may argue crime is a symptom of something. This is a symptom of failure in an individual. This could be a symptom of anger, rage, frustration. And, you know, because of that, right, the goal then is to find sources of their anger, or understand their decision to commit crime. So there's an emphasis then on treating offenders as people who are, in quotes, sick and curing their disease. So as a result of this, if we're treating offenders like this and that they're sick and that they're curing their disease, then the goal then is to improve their lives in some way. Not only of them, but perhaps in their community where they come from. So in this then, there's like this view that in order to prevent crime in the future, so future crime prevention is a process that requires societal investment. And this is something that you can see especially with the Black Lives Matter movement and defunding police, in that they want to have more of an emphasis on social welfare programs rather than on the criminal justice system, since this is a way that we can fix it now and fix future problems is by reinvesting in communities. And the last one we'll kind of talk about, there are others, but they're relatively minor, is one of non-intervention. And these folks, again, recognize power of the CJUS system, and they want to limit the involvement of the system oops, not what I wanted, and work to decriminalize certain crimes, such as drugs. We also want to limit placement within like a prison or something like that. So the goal is, like, they're not necessarily permissive, so they're not permissive per se, but they do want to change what is considered a crime and as well change how we treat people, change how the system attempts to correct people. So that's how they generally try to get that. So we'll pause that here, and then I'll see you guys next video.